once there was a lusty, hearty, healthy young baron, the Baron von Groswig, and he liked nothing better in all the world than smoking and drinking fine wine and good pipes, and going out hunting in his own forests with his 12 close, good hunting companions, all dressed in Lincoln green. And this was his idea of life and of pleasure. Well, for the first few years of his youth, this seemed very fine, and he really enjoyed himself. But after a few years, it has to be said, he finally got bored. And he thought to himself, how can I vary my amusements? I seem to have done an awful lot of this. The pleasures of the table, and indeed the pleasures of under the table, as they drank themselves and caroused into oblivion in the evenings and went out hunting every day. And he thought, I've got to vary this. So he took to just picking fights with his companions, and he started kicking them under the table in the evenings and started arguing with them for no good reason at all. Well, this kept him amused for all of a month. And at the end of that month he thought, no, I can't go on like this. I've got to change my conditions of life. And at last an idea occurred to him, and so it was that evening, as they were all carousing at the table, he surprised his companions a great deal by proposing a new toast. He said, my friends, to the Baroness von Groswig.
The Baroness! Who?
They asked, and he said, I've a mind to marry. And I've got von Schwillenhausen, the Baron von Schwillenhausen's daughter in mind. That's who I've got in mind. If you'll come with me, we'll go tomorrow to von Schwillenhausen's castle, and we'll lay my suit before him, and if he doesn't accept us, we'll cut off his nose. Huzzah! Well, they all agreed to do so. And the very next day, off they went to the von Schwillenhausen's castle. Well, they put the proposal before them, and the von Schwillenhausens thought, well, the Baron von Groswig, he's certainly an eligible young man, he's certainly wealthy enough. And the daughter was willing, so in no time at all, the wedding was arranged. It all went ahead, and in a very short space of months afterwards, it seemed to the Baron von Groswig, his new wife came to him and said,
My dear, I have such wonderful news.
Oh yes, what is it, lady?
We're expecting a new baronet, or baronetcy.
Oh, we are splendid, splendid.
And I assume, my dear, I've been talking to my mother, you see.
Oh, have you? Oh.
And she says, what she says is that my father, would you believe it? He used to smoke.
Well, yes, I can believe that.
And she made him give up for my sake. For
What?
the sake of the unborn child.
What?
So I assume you're going to give up smoking.
Oh,
And another thing.
What?
She said that what really helped her lying in was having her mother come to live with her.
What?
So I don't know. She'll stay until after the child's birth. I hope that's okay. Good.
Well, what could he do? His first child was on the way. And so it was. He gave up smoking. And his wife's mother came to stay with him for some time. Now, after the first child was born, it was only a few months, it seemed to him, when she came to him again and she said,
We've got another little baroness or baronetcy on the way.
Oh, have we? That's splendid.
So I assume my mother can stay.
What?
Just while I'm having the child again, she was such a help. And do you mind if my father comes? He's
What?
And my brother.
And your brother?
Yes. Oh, and another thing.
Another thing?
Yes, that singing you do late at night with all your drunken friends, it really wakes up the babies.
What?
And it keeps my mother awake. So can it stop, please? Probably not, don't invite them.
Woman, do you know what you're asking?
I feel so ill.
Oh, well, she threatened to faint away at his feet. Well, what could he do? As well as the smoking, out went the drinking. In came the father-in-law, in came the brother-in-law, and the 12 companions in Lincoln Green were dismissed to who knows when. Well, in a matter of years, he found himself a lusty, hearty, hale, strong baron of 48 with 12 children, and a 13th on the way, and none of the pleasures of his former life, and all his in-laws staying with him, and the coffers that the von Schwillenhausens had thought was inexhaustible, down to the last chest. And he looked at the financial situation of the estate, and his present life, and thought of all his former pleasures, and the 12 children and the 13th on the way, and he thought, what am I to do? Well, nothing. Nothing seems to me so good an option as to end it all. And he got out his beloved old sharp hunting knife, and he looked at it, and he tried it for size against his throat, and he thought, yes, I think that's what I'm going to do. And so he asked his oldest, dearest old retainer to set for him in a little room close to the bottom, just above the wine cellars, to set there a bottle of his wonderful old, most vintage and favourite wine, a wine that the von Schwillenhausens, he'd managed to hide this particular vintage from them. They put a bottle and a glass there for him, and his old, wonderful, his old favourite pipe, and some of the tobacco that the von Schwillenhausens also hadn't got yet. And to polish his dear old hunting knife, and to lay them all out there on the table, and to light a fire for him. Well, the old and dear retainer, he did all this with something almost like tenderness. And then the Baron requested that the door be locked, and his old retainer did so, and he sat there with his bottle, and his glass, and his pipe, the knife on the table. And he looked brooding into the fire, and thought of his old life and his old pleasures. And he thought most dearly of his old drinking companions, his old hunting companions. Well, what had happened to them? Well, 4 he knew had died in hunting accidents. 3 had died of alcoholism. 2, incredibly, had died from overeating. And the rest, well, scattered to the 4 winds. He had no idea what had happened to them. And he looked into the fire and thought his end was coming. When suddenly, to his amazement, he noticed that he was not alone in the room.
What ho?
And to his astonishment, he saw a most hideous-looking figure with a strange, twisted face and clothes all of cobwebs and a great trail of dust all around him and a strange, musty smell. And he turned to him and he said, "What ho? Surely it is for me to ask what ho. Who are you?"
Oh, I'm a man like any other.
"I think not," said the Baron. "I think not. Who are you?"
I am a genius.
"Well, you don't look much like one."
Oh, I am, my friend. I am the genius of suicide and despair.
Huh. Oh, really?
And I'm busy. So can you carry on?
Well,
Are you going to make a speech?
well, no, I hadn't thought about it. I mean, did you take any hand in the proceedings?
Oh, no, I'm a connoisseur.
Oh, really?
And I'm busy, so come on.
Well, is suicide popular at the moment?
Very.
Oh,
Quite the rage.
is it?
Yes.
Oh, good God.
I've got to go and see a young man next.
Oh.
I like them young.
Well, what's he killing himself about, for heaven's sake?
He's got too much money and too many friends. He's bored. It's an old story. No!
What?
Where's your compassion?
Compassion?
So,
Oh.
that's better.
How marvellous. How marvellous. What you tell me is marvellous. A young man killing himself because he's got too many friends and too much money.
Now, what are you doing?
Good God.
What are you thinking about that?
Oh, I'm thinking what a wonderful joke that is.
You're not thinking about your lost money.
Oh, empty coffers may be mended.
Not when you have 12 needy children they can't know.
Oh, 12 children can't all go wrong.
Yes, they can when you've got your in-laws living with you.
I shall have words with my wife. Things are going to change around here. I'll boot out the von Schwillenhausens by the end of the week.
Swizz!
Huzzah! And with that, the creature, whatever it was, disappeared and evaporated in a welter of smoke, a terrible smell, and a puff of irritation and annoyance. Well, after that, the Baron von Schwillenhausen, things changed around there, I can tell you. Off went the von Schwillenhausens. He came to a new arrangement with his wife. And he started drinking again, and smoking, and indeed hunting. And he looked in his books, and he mended the ways of the estate, and he saw how much money had been going out, and he reined in the horns. And he sorted things out, and one by one, As his 13 children came of age, he taught them the pleasures of the table, and indeed of under the table, and the pleasures of hunting, even and